Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Queen's Gambit, episode 1. It is called Openings. As a first episode, so we'll start spoiler free. This is actually the winner of our Patreon pilot program vote that we have at the $10 tier. Looking at pilots that came out in the last month or so. This one's actually a bit older than I thought it was. This came out towards the end of October. I genuinely thought this was like the end of November when I put it in the vote. But it was very popular, people wanted it. It was a very close vote as well. That's just narrowly won against two other shows, both of which were foreign shows on Netflix. But this is the based on the true story miniseries, 7 episodes starring Anna Taylor-Joy about the chess prodigy Beth Harmon, who I'd never heard of before. I don't know.
I suspect most people hadn't.
Yeah, I don't know chess superstars. So, it's not my area of expertise, shall we say. But yeah, that's very much what it's about. The first episode here, because we start with a brief, not present day, but like a brief, inner adult life at some chess, very publicized chess game, and the chaos around what she's like the morning of like getting to that chess game. But that's actually all we see of Anna Taylor-Joy in this episode, so we can't really even talk about the performance of the lead star because she's not there the rest of the episode, which makes sense because we're going back to her origins, we're going back to her as a kid going to an orphanage after her death of her mother and all that stuff. But
it's a little bit frustrating. It's probably my biggest knock on the episode, and not that that there are any other bad actors or anything like that, but just I know how good of an actress Anya Taylor-Joy is. I was like, I was looking forward to watching this show to see, this episode at least, to get her performance, and then I got 45 seconds of it, and then it's like, here you go. It's like, right, okay.
Yeah. That said, though, the young actress they had playing her was well cast, and I could see her looking like her at various points, but the performance itself was also very strong. There was a couple of great moments in particular that I thought she did really well with. Yeah, so I mean, the story's about how she discovered chess. This first episode, that is. Obviously, the story as a whole, I'm not sure how much it goes past the scene we saw at the start of the episode.
There's a possibility that's like the big climatic thing at the end of the season.
It could be, yeah. Or it could be like just once we get to her adult life in the middle of the season, and then it goes beyond that into more stuff. But this first episode's about her discovering the game and becoming very good at it, and dealing with her mother's death, and being in this orphanage and essentially being very detached from everyone else, as well as also being addicted to tranquilizer pills, which apparently were a very common thing to hand out to kids at orphanages to keep them, I guess,
I buy it,
malleable.
I want to say that it's not done in like a malicious of a way, because I think it's very important to know that, because I think it's often presented this way in media. This orphanage isn't like an evil place or anything like that. It seems perfectly nice.
A bit strict, but yeah, nothing.
Yeah, a little bit strict, but they're not being like cruel to the kids or anything. And okay, yes, they're giving them they're drugging them here, but it's like
notably the visual of them getting these pills though is a lot like a scene in like a mental hospital in any other movie where they're lining up at the little window and they're getting the little cups.
It is exactly like that. But again, it never comes across like they're being evil or malicious to the kids or anything like that. They seem reasonably well treated.
Yeah. So that's the gist of the first episode. Obviously we'll get into details a bit more when we get to spoilers. But yes, so Connor, what did you think of the first episode of The Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of gave it away when I said the biggest complaint I had was not enough Anya Taylor-Joy, because it's pretty damn good.
It's got a sense of style right from the start, which is something that some Netflix shows can lack and feel a bit bland. I never felt that with this. This feels very much like it's just going to be a 7-hour or so movie that's been.
This is, correct if I'm wrong, the same director that did Godless. I very much enjoyed.
I did not know that, but I'm not surprised upon hearing it because it feels very cinematic right from the get-go. And it's notable that theoretically this is a harder one to have that feeling with, because Godless by its nature is this big western with big open vistas and gunfights and lots of cinematic action moments. This is a little girl discovering she likes to play chess. So
yeah, but I mean that even as a western, and with all the things it has, it stood out as one of the best directed TV shows we've ever seen, and almost certainly the best directed Netflix show to that point.
Yeah. I'm not ready to say that, I mean, this is better directed. It might never be better directed, but it's only been one episode, so I mean, I can't really judge it. It's interesting though that both this and that were exactly 7 episodes, especially since Godless was supposed to clearly be 6, and one episode was just far too long, and they went, "Oh, let's just split this in half."
Yeah.
Which was notable. That was probably the biggest complaint of that miniseries, is that you could really feel 5 and 6 were really supposed to just be the one episode. And
yeah, they were paced weirdly because of it.
Yeah, and they both felt kind of off because of it. But that was kind of the extent of the complaints, because it was a fantastic 7 episodes.
I really liked that show.
It's not a surprise. I mean, honestly, if you told me this was directed by the same person, I might have rushed us to do it when it came out. I did not know that.
For the record, I did mention that when this came out, but you were just having none of it. Not paying. You just don't pay attention to things I say. Someone else should have told you this, and then we'd have done this months ago.
This came out during the October-thon, okay? I was doing horror movies like daily. It was madness. Yeah, so it's very well directed. That's first and foremost. The little girl who plays young Beth, she is very good. There's a couple of great moments. There's a moment, I don't have to really say much spoilers here, but there's a moment where she's given a gift that's like a little girl gift, and she clearly has no idea what to do with this stupid doll that she's been handed, and sort of the person she's kind of friends with kind of sort of looks at her and sort of like, thank him, and the way she kind of says thank you through her teeth is like it's a nuanced response, and it made me laugh. It was genuinely quite funny, and it was all just from this girl's performance.
It's a very understated performance in a really good way, in that I find most kids can't do. Like most kid actors can't pull this off, the subtlety of it, because there is a lot of sitting around and a lot of like blank stares that she gives, but they're like really important in this. That's by design rather than just a lack of acting like you sometimes get.
Yeah. So no, and honestly, like the love of the game. I mean, if I have any kind of weird critique, and maybe this will become clear thematically as it goes on, and maybe it's like a crutch for her, but the first episode kind of made me chuckle in a way that it kind of implies that she gets chest superpowers from tranquilizers. So I mean, which obviously isn't exactly true. Maybe it helps her focus, maybe it helps her think, and that's kind of implied. But the way it presented was kind of like she has to pop the pills as if, I don't know.
No, I did not get super. It came across as this is an addict, as a 8 or 9-year-old girl, whatever she is.
Oh, of course she's an addict. I'm not saying she's like that.
Right. It came across as that immediately, to like as in a harrowing way. There was no darkly funny, superpower from it to me.
The first time she takes them at night, she starts having fantasies of a giant chessboard in the ceiling, and she's like teaching herself how to play.
Yeah.
Chess superpower.
Fine. Chess superpowers.
Chess superpower. So said. But yeah. So like the sort of the friend she makes, the custodian at the orphanage, who's the guy who she kind of runs into when she's in the basement, and he plays chess, and that's who she kind of plays and learns from. He's played by Billy Camp, who we know from a few different things. He was on The Night Of. He was on The Leftovers. He was on...
Most recently was on The Outside, right?
Yeah, that show we didn't like from HBO that much.
Yeah. Not his fault.
No, not his fault by any means. But he pops up here, so he's kind of a dependable face, like sort of grumpy, upper middle-aged man. He's always solid, face. Isn't he? Oh yeah, he's a good actor. There's really no complaints. And him and the girl are kind of the only standouts of this. But it's because it mainly focuses on them. There's not a whole lot of other.
Again, that's kind of what there's not that anyone else does anything wrong or that's bad. Just no one else has any chance to really shine like they do.
Yeah, but I do think the interesting premise of the episode being she kind of finds something to focus on and find solace in the chess. And the chess is the healthy part. The unhealthy part, of course, is the tranquilizers. And of course, the tranquilizers aren't her fault. She didn't decide to start taking tranquilizers. She was given them
Yes.
by adults. And maybe a bit of dodgy advice from a fellow inmate. Forgive the word inmate, but
yes, yeah. I mean,
orphanages feel like prisons to me. Okay.
No, they do it, and this kind of, I almost say, presents it as one. But like there are obvious parallels, like you say, they're all in the one room with the beds, the really
lining up for medication. They got a rec room. There's a lot of weird parallels to a prison with an orphanage.
There is, but again, doesn't feel evil like it does in a lot of media.
No. This is not sinister.
Even the drugs, it just feels like, okay, no, it's a different time. They just didn't know any better, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yes, but you're being very forgiving here.
I'm not saying they should have been giving them. I'm just saying.
No, but you keep saying it's a different time. Like, you could be a little harsher. You could say, "Oh, they were idiots."
Well, obviously,
giving kids tranquilizers so they'd be calmer. Come on.
Look, all I'm saying is, I can't say I blame them. If I had to say, I mean, there's what 30, 40 kids there. I'd probably want to give them tranquilizers too.
Oh dear.
If I had to deal with that,
I'd give you tranquilizers, but you might just sit there catatonic if I give you.
Only one way to find out.
So yeah, so I guess we might give the spoiler warning then, just so we can dive into some of the later plot details and where it goes. I think the actual mechanic of the chess being this thing she focuses on and becomes essentially obsessed with, to the point where, in a healthy way, where it's all she wants to do, and it's this secret thing at first, because she's sneaking down into the basement to play games of chess, and eventually when like the teachers find out, and they'll only find out because it gets to the point, because obviously the first time she plays, she gets her ass whipped because in like 4 moves.
She's just kind of picked up how the pieces move by watching him play against himself for a bit.
Yeah, I actually thought she said something wrong, and I thought, and not to the point where I want to correct her, but I thought he was going to correct her himself.
Was it the way the knight moves?
It was, yeah, because she said like 1 up and 1 over, and I went, no, it's 2 up and 1 over.
It's because she says 1 up and 1 diagonal.
Ah, okay.
And I was doing the same, because in my head it's 2 then 1 or 1 then 2, right?
Yeah, I always think of it as an L rather than a.
I do as well, but then when I thought about it, 1 plus the diagonal does actually work out exactly the same. It's just a different way of phrasing it.
Okay. Well, now that I'm purely correct, the chess playing.
No, I believe they had like people. They had like chess consultants that was like, no, every time you see a chessboard, it's like, no, this is exact how it would be. Every move was played out to perfection, so to speak. I
know, it makes sense that you can do that. Chess is kind of a weird game to me, in that every kind of permutation that could possibly happen is essentially being mathematically, thought of, and
it's just whether or not your opponent knows it.
Kind of. There's a weird. I don't know, there's a weird thing about chess to me where it's so been picked to death by really smart people for centuries that it just like there's, and it's not to say that there's no sportsmanship in it or there's no like game quality. There is, but to me it's almost more impressive to watch 2 middling players play, because they're not complete experts, versus people who, because to me it was kind of like, once she gets to the point where she's like, oh, it's mate in 4 moves, I'm like, is this not just boring now? You're like, oh, I can see the 1 in 4 moves. Like, you're stunned. There's nothing they can do.
No, I get where you're coming from.
Like, at that point, it's like playing a video game on easy, where you're just like, oh, I'm just killing everything in 1 hit. There's no point. No challenge anymore.
No, I get it.
Not that we're here to debate the love of playing chess. It's very complex, and if you, I get the appeal of it, but there is like a weird thing to it, because
I enjoy playing it, like in general, just not anything like even this level, like just enough that I can sit down and play and enjoy myself. Yeah,
you're not playing multiple people at the same time, and I mean, can you name all the squares on the board?
No, probably not.
Nah.
I mean, I've always done it with the in terms of just like alphabet across and then numbers up. So it'd be like the bottom left is like A1, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I get, it sounds reasonable enough when he said, because I think at one point he says, oh, like this knight went to, king bishop square whatever, and I'm like, okay, I can get the logic of that. Somewhat makes sense to me, in that it's that square that's in front of the bishop on the king's side. Like I kind of, it roughly makes sense.
There's context to it that you can kind of work it out.
But so I mean, we're not here to really debate what we think about chess anyway. It's just naturally it came up a little bit. So Yeah, I mean, no, she gets to this point. No, she gets so good that, and he starts to recognize this because at first he's a little. The first time she beats him, he's a little frustrated. And I was wondering if part of the because early on, like, he beats her like the second or third time they play, where he says, "Okay, now you resign because I took your queen that way," and I was like, "But you can get your queen taken and still win the game." And I was wondering if this was something she was going to like. Is this like her legacy? She proved, oh no, you can lose your queen. I mean, it's called the Queen's Gambit after all, so I mean, I didn't know exactly what that was referring to.
Sure.
And sacrificing your queen to ultimately win the game does seem like a bit of a gambit, but
yeah.
But I wasn't sure if that was kind of where it was where we're going. But once he realizes how good she is, to the point where, okay, you should probably start learning all these terms and things because you're thinking about it at a way more advanced level than you actually are. He invites the captain of the high school chess, so the teacher who runs the chess club over at the high school, and he comes over and plays her, and gets annihilated, and then it's like, okay, how about we both play her at the same time, see what she does there, and she annihilates both of them. In fact, she doesn't even look at the board. She turns around and faces the wall, and she just hears what they say to her. Like, oh, we moved here. And she's like, I moved there.
It's like that, like where she's bored of it because it's too easy.
Yeah.
Is that's the way it presents it, where, he's like, okay, I'm doing this, and she's like, oh, yeah, move that one. It's like, all right, okay. Like 3 moves later, she's won.
Yeah. It almost feels like she should get into like physics or something. If her mind's this good with numbers and strategy, maybe she should apply it to something that could benefit the world.
Maybe she doesn't want to. Maybe she wants to play chess.
I'm just saying, there's so many. I mean, she can still play chess. She's clearly mastered it already. Like, where else is there to go?
To become the best in the world.
She's mastered chess. Next, time travel. So it's a logical step.
I would love to see you argue this with an actual like chess grandmaster.
Go cure cancer or something. You're clearly smart enough. Your mind sees numbers in a way that the rest of us just can't, and strategy in a way. So, yeah. Or run government. Oh yeah, like imagine like a champion, grandmaster chess champion, doing the budget and like organizing like where all the budget goes for a country. They'd be best for that. They could strategize.
The problem is that maybe you're overlooking, especially on that last point. I mean, the physics maybe I can let slide, but this one here is often in chess. There's a number of sacrifices you make because it's like, that'll win me the game, right? You can't really do that in economics because that's people's lives.
I'm not saying sacrifice the people. I'm saying sacrifice. I don't know. Let's take the US for example. Maybe half the military spending, for example.
That happens to be a particularly easy target. Let's be honest.
All right.
In other countries, it's not as easy as that.
Look, I went for the obvious choice first. There's definitely other places we can go with this, right? I'd have to give it some thought as to. But I'm not the chess grandmaster. That's the point. I'm not the one who can make these sacrifices.
Oh, god damn it.
Oh dear. Anyway, so she goes to the high school and beats like, what was it, 12?
I think it was 12 of them at once. Yeah.
High school kids.
And she's like grilling them after, gloating about it afterwards. Where she's like, oh, "This guy was supposed to be the best. He was trash. I beat him in like 6 moves."
Yeah, she's setting stuff for her face with chocolate. She's got chocolate, which just to remind you she has a 9-year-old. Like when she's eating the chocolate, she's got chocolate all over the side of her face, just to remind you that she actually is still really young. Which I assume she was given that for beating everyone. I'm sure the teacher bought her some chocolates.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, "You can have the rest," and she goes off. Her concern though at this point is that during this time we debated the pills, of course, the tranquilizers maybe being a bit dodgy to be given kids. They're still giving them some pills because they'll get the red ones, I think it is, by the end. But they don't get these, the green ones with the tranquilizers. They've stopped giving the green ones. And she's like, "Wait, where's my green pills? I need my green pills." Because one of the things we've not mentioned is she saves them up. She doesn't take them when she's supposed to take them like once per day. She saves them up and then takes 5 or 6 like one night to have her, beautiful mind moments where she's visualizing things and moving things around. and she gets a little handful from her like one kind of friend who sort of gave her this idea in the first place, the idea of saving them up, and it feels better. Again, bad advice. Clearly, that's leading to some sort of it's becoming more recreational than it is a
yeah. And as the friend kind of says when she's like, oh, I need more. She's like, oh, you're going withdrawal symptoms. It's like, yep, you're not going to be the only one. There's going to be a lot of edgy kids running around, and yeah, there probably is.
Yeah. Which does beg the I didn't quite catch what the red ones were. I'm curious what they still are. But they mentioned that they're not doing this anymore because the state law has now said, oh, none of this. Stop that now.
They did say what they were the first time that he gave her the pills. He's like, this one does that and that one does this.
I don't remember, though. But
no, me either. Because the red ones weren't as important, so it clearly doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if that's something like an argument. I mean, again, not a medical expert by any means. But I wonder if to counter the withdrawal is you take them off them, go to one every other day, for example. I mean,
as a rule, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
The reality is because it was only one a day anyway, in theory, they shouldn't have needed to.
Okay,
because it was just one a day. But
the way they've been taking them,
and however many others were not taking them as prescribed.
Yes. Yeah, don't give kids tranquilizers.
Unless there's like 40 of them and they're all chaotic, in which case I completely empathize with you.
What's funny, from a logical, empathetic side of me, I'm like, yes, you should never do this. But the real me, the one who would like to quieten the kids down, is like, we should give kids tranquilizers.
How bad can it be?
Shut them up. Quiet down, child. Quiet down.
Yeah. It sounds like bliss.
How much teachers' lives would be so much better if all the kids were trying. Especially in the lower classes, because obviously your classes, when you get into a certain point in school, you get split into the higher grades, the lower grade,
I reckon teachers are loving it right now when they're all doing Zoom classes. They can just mute all the kids and be like, life's good.
I don't think that's true. I think they're having a nightmare right now because none of the kids actually take it seriously and none of them are paying attention because they're all sitting at home.
Right, but I mean, do you remember school? People didn't pay attention anyway.
I think it's worse if everyone's on a Zoom. Even the kids who would pay attention, I think, are struggling to pay attention on a Zoom call. Oh,
they absolutely are. But also, teachers can just mute them and go, no, I don't care anymore.
I don't think that's happening.
Look, I'm not saying they're all doing that. I'm sure most teachers are quite good people and care about their students, all that bullshit. But there are definitely some teachers who are doing that.
Admittedly, it's probably easier for the teachers to sneak some booze in while they're teaching class. Just all I have to do is slide over off camera for a second, take a sip of their whiskey or whatever, slide back in.
Just pour it like a rum and coke, and no one will question it. But one of the other things, obviously, that's going to be a factor here is there's a moment early on with Attila Joy, because she wakes up in the hotel room and she's late for a game. She has to quickly make herself up. She takes some of these green pills, which obviously we find out what they are. Oh, so clearly she's still taking them as an adult. She's obviously got a source of her tranquilizers. Despite the ending of this episode, it's obviously something that doesn't go away entirely.
Yeah. But she's kind of like it's akin to like a rock star who's been partying all night and is late and has to fix herself up. And there's someone lying in her bed. We don't see who it is. So the idea of her sex life being a factor in the show is sort of thematically inserted in that first scene. Mm-hmm. And then as the episode goes on, obviously she's 9 years old. Part of what we get of her journey is kind of her starting to discover some of these ideas. Because her friend character keeps calling people cocksuckers. It's kind of a running gag. She keeps calling people.
It's the very first thing we hear from her off screen.
She keeps calling people cocksuckers, and at one point, when her the janitor friend who's playing her chess, at one point when he upsets her, minorly, she calls him a cocksucker, and he gets mad and tells her to get out. And she hasn't
reasonable reaction when a 9-year-old calls you a cocksucker.
Yeah, but then she goes to her friend, and they're in the bathroom later, and she's like, "Hey, can I ask you something?" And she's like, "What? What's a cocksucker?" She had no idea what she was saying when she said it. This is just something she's heard.
It was just something she'd heard and was like, "Oh, that'll do."
But the friend has to say, "Okay, but do you know what a cock is?" And she has to kind of explain that some girls like sucking on, as she puts it, that thumb. because that's how she describes it. And she's like, "Do you like it?" She's like, "I haven't tried one yet." But it kind of, and there's also like a scene where she's looking at the older boys, which, by the way, one of those older boys is looking back at her. This is a 9-year-old kid. What are you doing, creeping on a 9-year-old kid at an orphanage? You creepy shit.
Yep, that is a bit weird.
Very weird.
Yep, not arguing this one.
But it sets up this thematic thing where she's thinking about these things, and she is staring at the older kids kissing each other. She's thinking about this stuff. So clearly, this side of it is something that's going to be coming into the story more and more as she grows up. You would imagine, but this is kind of her first exposure to any of the side of things.
And it's for the most part, it's a really realistic portrayal of it.
I think so, yeah, because she's asking questions. She's looking at a science book at one point, and we do actually get a glimpse of them get like a sex ed class that they're watching something in the projector that's telling them about the first period and stuff.
Yeah, we do hear that, which I'm sure is actually probably a moment we'll get, given all the other moments that we're getting with her here.
Will it be during a chess game?
Almost certainly. Almost certainly, and it'll interrupt it, and she'll be like, I need to, go and sort myself out, and it'll be an awkward situation. Yeah, you can see it coming.
Part of me wants to say she's just going to be like Jesse the Body Ventura and Predator and say, I ain't got time to bleed, and finish the game and win it.
I honestly, given her personality, I think that's a very realistic outcome to that scenario.
Even though, obviously, this is set way before Predator existed. I don't care. She's going to quote Jesse the Body Ventura.
I mean, I think the actual quoting part is maybe probably unlikely, but the spirit of it, I can see, yes.
Yes. So no, because they're watching a movie towards the end. I wasn't quite. It looked Ben-Hur-ish. I don't know if it actually was.
It wasn't Ben-Hur because I've seen Ben-Hur and
yeah.
I don't know what this was. It was definitely some sort of Roman epic. Yeah. And I'm interested. I want to know what it is.
Well, this is really nerdy to get into, right? But I was noticing, hey, they're watching that in the correct aspect ratio, which for the time period is a very weird thing. But then I thought about it. Oh, this is like pre-VHS, so they're watching it literally on film reels. So clearly they just have, a 16mm print of this movie. And I'm like, man, that must have been quite special for these guys. Because it's not like you could watch movies, in class that often when all you've got is some projector reels. Because I mean, the movie collection the orphanage has is probably like, a dozen or something like that.
It doesn't seem that bad because we see them watching a handful of different movies over the course of the episode, right?
Aye, but most of the other ones are educational from the sounds of it.
You might be right, yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, though, watching movies at home was a very, very niche thing because you had to have a projector with film reels and you had to go out and buy film. They're
the exception because they're functioning as a school with and using it mostly for educational purposes, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's I guess once you've got the projector and the equipment and everything there ready, it's easy enough. The reels are the easiest part after that point to just add on.
Yeah, because I was like, man, you know what? This is actually obviously it was much easier to deal with VHS, but until Blu-ray, I would say this is actually better than everything that came before Blu-ray. I would say this is better. I mean, obviously it's not as convenient, but the quality and you're getting the proper aspect ratio, the film. I think it'll be higher quality.
Pretty much as good as it would have done.
Yeah, I'd say it looks better than standard def for sure. I mean, obviously it won't be the full 35mm, but it'll look better than what DVD does. I mean, as long as obviously keeping in mind it deteriorates over time, so eventually it won't. But at least when it's in good condition, it will look better than the DVD. So I was like, man, you know what? If I was a movie nerd at the time period, I mean, this would be I just imagine movie nerds when VHS and Betamax became a thing, and that was the convenient way of watching movies now. Switching if you did collect real film and you watched real film, and then you're like, oh no, now I need to watch pan and scan VHS. I'm a shitty little TV.
I must feel like such a downgrade.
Yeah, I was like, man, because it was obviously so much bigger as well because the projector onto a sheet.
It's true because. For both of us, our entire lives, things have only gotten better.
Yes.
We have only experienced an increasing quality of the way we watch movies at home, barring streaming, really, I guess, which is obviously inferior to Blu-rays. But
it's a weird thing because I watched this in 4K with Dolby Vision, so naturally this is kind of this weird thing where some things are better than the Blu-ray, but some things, obviously, bit rate's not as good. It's just it's a
It's hit or miss, yeah. But this advance to streaming is the first like comparable cross compatible almost like in comparison. Whereas everything else has been everything else has been just an obvious upgrade. Whereas like you're right, going from these reels down to VHS would be terrible.
It would be. I was like, man, this
I'm very
really
glad I never had to experience that shit.
Yeah, because I was sitting watching them like, this is like, you know, the olden day. I mean, comparatively speaking, no offense to anyone who's alive at this time who feels like I just called them ancient, but you know,
they're probably not watching us anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, but to us, to a couple of, you know, guys who were born in '89 and like '94. There you go. Yeah. This feels, you know, like the olden days, and I'm like, this looks like a really nice way of watching a movie. This looks like a very pleasing experience. I mean, the movie looks really long and boring from the glimpses we get of it.
How dare you? I don't know what I don't even know what the movie is, but how dare you?
I could just tell by looking at it, it's at least 3 hours long. And
do you know what? Before I even saw any of it, I was hearing the names. I'm like, "Ooh, this sounds like a Roman thing." I'm intrigued.
Yeah, some of the teachers were like crying as they were watching it. I'm like,
I want to watch this movie.
This doesn't seem that emotional. I don't know why you're getting so emotional about this.
Well, that's because you haven't experienced the character arcs.
Oh dear. But doesn't chess date back to that time period? Is that not maybe a thematic?
Oh, chess is old as balls. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you exactly right. I know it's a pre-Christian game. Like it's that old. Like at least in terms of at least in you know like the British and Irish stuff. So you know you're looking. I mean at least 1700 years. I'd say. Maybe older, I don't know.
I was just wondering if they were trying to do something thematic with the movie choice, perhaps. You know, was there a gambit happening on screen between the characters, perhaps?
There is a bit where they say, "Oh, this is the Queen's Gambit," and I was like, Peter Griffin. They said it.
You know, Ellie, we really are the Last of Us. That's never said. That's never said in the game, but it's become a bit of a running joke.
There's a whole. There's been on Twitter just this week. That's been a running thing with take whatever you want and kind of put that the stupid line that says the title or the name in a quote that's just not in the movie. And I think the thing that you usually tweet along with it. I've watched this movie however many times. I'd never noticed this or never get bored of this line. And I did feel like I just want to screenshot that and use that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's this thing. Since it's actually a name of the move or the opening in chess, it's like, okay, it makes sense that it would come up in conversation. It doesn't feel that forced. But, I mean, the direction does linger on it, and the music kind of swells as he says, that's called the Queen's Gambit.
Like, all right. That's not going to come up again.
All right. Do you know what the Queen's Gambit is? Having only watched one episode, the Queen's Gambit in this is that kick from the Karate Kid, where he's learning to do the, where he's got the one leg up and he does the thing, and like that's what he's going to. She's going to pull this out. She's going to pull out the Queen's Gambit in the final chess fight. The show.
I assume the whole thing that she'll modify something and have one name, because obviously some of the things are the X variation, which is obviously a specific thing that then someone figured out a new way of kind of just shuffling it a little bit to do something slightly different, and it became named after them. I'm wondering if she does something like that with the Queen's Gambit. I mean, I don't know. It's obviously all history. Just look it up, but I'm not going to do that.
Of course not. So as everyone's watching this movie towards the end of the episode, though, she, because all these green pills, which they're not being given anymore, are still in this big jar behind the counter, which is always locked. And she decides to go and unscrew the little lock that padlocks on and crawl in. And I always expect her to take some handfuls and put them in her pocket so she could dish them out.
That's how it starts.
No, that's how it ends. Well, not ends, but because that's not the first thing. That's the second thing she does. The first thing she does is take a handful and just shove them in her mouth. And I'm like, okay, right. I already got you were addicted. I didn't get that you were craving them this much that you're just shoveling.
She is throwing them down like Skittles.
Yeah. And I'm glad there was. I mean, obviously it's based on a true story, so I imagine they were always going to follow up with whatever the real consequence was. But I'm like, there has to be a consequence to her just putting a handful of those in her mouth.
That was a big handful of pills. Yeah.
And she does get caught because it's playing tense where she's asked to go to the bathroom. She's doing this while they're all in the room watching the movie, And they're, it's like, oh, they're going to come out. Is she going to get this done in time? Because it's taking a long time for you to unscrew the padlock and like climb in and all that. And when they get out, like they catch her. She's climbing out the window, and like the teachers there, the entire class of orphanage or the orphanage are looking at her, and instead of like reacting in any way, she just completely collapses because she just took a handful of tranquilizers.
Yeah, I think my favorite is she probably could have gotten out quicker, but she gets like basically out, and then is like, no, I'm going back for the entire jar.
Yeah, she goes full junkie. She's just thinking about her fix. She's not even thinking about the logic of how she's going to get away with this. She's not planning or scheming, which we know she can do because ultimately chess in a lot of ways is about planning and strategizing.
I mean, just the fact that she planned enough she had the screwdriver ahead of time. She knew to wait till a certain point in the movie where it was believable enough that she could, okay, she'll need to go to the toilet now. Left it relatively near the end, obviously probably for that reason. But like all of this was well thought out. It was planned right up until the moment where she had to leave the rest of the pills.
My joking aside, I think ultimately the point here is that she planned and strategized, and then the pills get in the way is going to be the ultimate lesson. Is that she's actually going to be better off without pills if she ever actually learns to do that. Like, right,
because basically right after she has to come off them for the first time is just before she's got to play all like 12 of the high school kids. And she's jittery and edgy, and she just needs a fix so that she can be calm enough to get through it and think clearly.
Yeah, and if you think about the opening of the episode, the pills in her lifestyle almost get in the way of the chess game that she's going to play.
She's running late, and it's embarrassing and almost offensive to her opponent, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of, as I understand it, there's a lot of like traditions and do's and don'ts about your etiquette at the chess game, which is really disappointing to me because apparently it's not the done thing to trash talk your opponent in a chess game, but I think it'd make it way more entertaining.
I do as well, but no, it's this obviously, even without much context of knowing chess, it just comes across as disrespectful from the way it's filmed, right? Oh,
sure, yeah. The direction makes it very clear to make a serious point. Even though in my head right now, all I'm thinking about is her saying, "My horse is coming for you." As she's like laughing in someone's face.
That would be funnier. No argue with that.
I'm thinking of trash talking a chess game. Especially when the other table's this stuffy old dude. I mean, he wasn't that old in that scene, but like, when you think of someone playing chess, you probably think of a stuffy old dude.
That's fair. And to that point, even here, you say, there's a lot of etiquette and stuff at the table. One of the first things she told is girls don't play chess.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously that's a big deal here.
And yeah. I mean, I presume part of the reason why she's such a big deal as a human being is because she kind of is maybe one of the first big female players who breaks through that barrier and completely, smashes this ridiculous notion that chess is a man's game for some reason, when there's no reason why it should be.
It's a weird one to even consider. Like there are some sports where you separate your men and your women based on old biological reasons, right? In terms of physical elements, so I at least understand where that came from.
Yeah.
Whereas here it is literally just a societal thing.
Yeah, I've always felt the same about acting. There's no reason to separate actors and actresses because it's not.
No, I agree. I think the reason a lot of them still do it, frankly, is to guarantee that there is a spotlight on some women as well, so that it doesn't just end up overstuffed with men.
That is the reason. Sadly, is that unfortunately most years it would still be a man winning, and it probably wouldn't actually end up being fair. But realistically, if you're looking at if it's just the skill of acting versus the skill of acting, there's no reason why anyone should be in separate categories for that. Everyone's kind of playing with the same tools.
They are directly comparable, yeah.
And chess is kind of the same. Chess is purely a mental game. There's absolutely no reason why it should be split between genders. Or not even split. Here it's not the split, it's just that girls don't play. You're not allowed to play. This is a man's game, is the attitude that, and obviously, this custodian, he very quickly, as a grumpy man, sort of lets her become a part of it and trains her and realizes he's got something on her hand. So he never comes across too badly. But that's one of the first things he says. And then obviously once he starts losing, this like, oh dear.
Again, in his defense, it never feels like he's actually saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be allowed to play." It's more just, girls don't play chess. You obviously, he thinks that she's just there to annoy him almost. This is just the annoying little kid, and he's just trying to get rid of her the quickest way that he can, rather than actually meaning that she shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
because he does soften over, as the episode goes on, of course.
Oh yeah, of course. He's not exactly a sort of loving embrace type of guy, but
not yet. Give it time.
Oh yeah, I'm expecting like her crying at his funeral in like episode 4 or something, like some sort of tragedy. When he's much older than her, obviously, so I'm expecting some sort of sad death at some point.
Yeah, that would make sense. I am expecting he'll presumably stay being her mentor. Even though she clearly,
doesn't need one,
has probably already surpassed him in terms of just the game of chess. Just as a life mentor, more than anything. As a father figure, because again, she's in an orphanage. She doesn't have a father figure, anymore at this point.
Going from that opening scene, he did a bang up job.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I've been really jokey with this one, but if you look at the way this is handled from a directorial point of view, like the themes of her addiction are all very much set up in the first scene. It's a big risk spending the entire episode with kid actors doing this story, but learning.
I was pretty surprised actually, because when it flashed back, I thought, okay, we'll do a little bit here, and then we'll get back to this game that's about to start. And it took a good 5 minutes. So I was like, oh no, this is all we're doing all episode.
Learning how she discovered the game, and sort of falling for it, and it becoming this leading point for her, and why it kind of filled the void in her life where she had nothing else, something to kind of focus on. I think that is important to the story, and maybe gives a sort of an emotional attachment to it beyond just she's good at chess and is she likes it.
It would be very easy to cut this episode up into a handful of flashbacks interspersed throughout the rest of the show, right? If you wanted to do it that route. But I think it has more weight just doing it as one complete story here.
I think so too. And if you wanted to play with structure, I mean, you could maybe argue it could have gone a bit later. We could have started off with some later adventures, and this could have been like a sort of almost like an interlude episode in the middle where we jump back and sort of see. But admittedly, maybe I have to play it differently a little bit just so it feels like it fits there. But that could have been an option, and I'm not saying they should have done that. I think it works well here.
I'm sure they thought about all these options when they were writing it.
Oh, for sure. It is kind of interesting that they made the ballsy call to go, you know what, we're not going to have her star. Really, barring one scene in the first episode, we're going to completely go elsewhere, and just hope that we've captivated you enough with the story and the cliffhanger and the teases of where it's going that you're going to be interested in this girl's journey. And I think like any good sports movie, and this is obviously a very not a serious drama, but it definitely has moments of humor. It's not it's not a completely dour thing by any means. It's got a lot of moments of intrigue, inspiration, kind of the passion for it, all the rest of it. But like a lot of sports movies, it does kind of feel like it is going to be this rise through the episodes, and that's why when we talk about this being like a 7-hour movie, I think so far at least I can compare this to other sports movies in like the early stages of the team or the one kid falling in love with the thing, and then they're going to like go through and eventually get to competitions and go. Obviously, this is going to go a bit further in that it's going to go into more of like, I assume, her more rocky personal life as
I'm sure, yeah. And I think what's important to note is we often talk about Netflix shows being it's just a long movie, and often that's to its detriment in that it's badly paced episodes, and it's just they expect people to just run straight into the next one. But I do think this is a very strong structured episode of TV in its own right, as much as we say, okay, it's probably just a 7-hour movie.
Yeah, it's
purposes.
This has a story. It has a beginning, middle, and end of what it's doing. It has the falling in love with the game, of course, which essentially culminates with her beating 12 high school kids and feeling quite smug about it. And it has the tranquilizer thing, which again is a story through, which gives us the big cliffhanger. And it does feel like a genuine cliffhanger. Her being caught trying to steal all these pills and collapsing does feel like a big moment to end your episode on.
It's an impressive way to do it, because obviously we know she's ultimately okay because there's a future, there's the rest of a show. But there are obviously going to be consequences as well, and that's what the cliffhanger is. What are they going to do? What's the reaction going to be? More than is she going to be okay? Which is, it would be easy to dismiss this as she's not in danger, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah. So going from the description of episode 2, because I was curious. It does sound like there's just an instant time jump to teenage life. So I assume that Anya Taylor-Joy is going to be playing teenage Beth.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So we will be getting to that, which I think makes some sense. I don't necessarily know from a pacing perspective if I'd want them to go through the. I mean, there may be a couple of scenes, but I don't know if I'd want a whole episode of like recovery in the hospital and sort of the fallout of this and so on. I think it makes a bit more sense to jump ahead to the next stage of her life that's relevant. And obviously, there'll be a couple of references to, when she did this and when the fallout.
There might even be a couple of flashbacks from here.
Yeah, still. Yeah. But not to spend the whole episode going monotonously, or not monotonously, but what's the word I'm looking for? Methodically. That's the word. Methodically, going through the next stages of it. Even though theoretically, from the pacing, you could do that. You like if you gave me this first episode, cut out that opening scene. Right, take away the opening scene to imply that we're getting to her adult life, and said, "Oh, this is just a season going through like this girl's like first year of discovering chess, and episode 2 will be following up on the collapse and how she then convinces them to let her play chess again and stuff, and so on and so on." Like, I could have believed you. The pacing feels like it's there for that as well. If you wanted to go that route, obviously not, but.
In many ways, that means the 7 episodes is probably some restraint, because it would be easy to just go, well, let's just do 10 episodes and throw this in there, for example, as the next episode. Like, we're just throwing out there now. It would be easy to do that if you wanted to. Also,
jumping to her high school life and presumably only spending 1 episode on high school life again, perhaps, might also is what helps make this feel like true episodes as opposed to. Some Netflix shows have the problem of there's no episode structures, there's no individuality to any of the episodes. At the very least, these early episodes are all going to have a distinct feel because they're all different stages of life. So, definitely really well put together so far. Good performances. Direction really. There's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of like beams of light coming through the windows of the orphanage. It's got a very golden kind of look to it. I think obviously one of the directorial moments, which is arguably almost overdone, but I kind of like it, is when she goes down to the basement to clean the erasers for the blackboard, and it's like she sees the custodian like at the table, but she doesn't see the chess game, and there's like something on the shelves of covering up what he's actually doing, and there's this sort of slow thing when we keep getting our POV. As she's trying to see what he's doing, it's sort of building up to eventually seeing the chessboard. It makes a bit, it's I'm trying to think of something to compare it to. I don't know, in a superhero movie where someone is almost about to find the thing that's going to give them a superpower, like kind of thing, where she's like,
sure.
"Oh, what is it? Oh, what's that?" And the music's kind of sentimental and it's kind of building up and it's building up. I arguably you could almost argue it's a little overdone, but. It's kind of this thing where we're doing this from hindsight, where we know how important this is to our life, so it treats it this way. And this is one of those moments where I can almost say with 99.999% certainty that when this moment happened in real life, if she did indeed discover chess in the basement of the orphanage, which seems like a broad stroke that probably is roughly true.
That sounds plausible.
I don't imagine that the first time she did it, she spent like 10 seconds like trying to see what it was, and it was like hidden from her, and
she just walked in and was like, "What's that?"
Yeah, pretty much. So, and that's okay. Dramatic license. That's making it feel like more of a moment.
This is something that I say all the time when it comes to any sort of biographical storytelling. Specifically, storytelling is it's a story. It's a movie or a TV show. You can fudge dates and details for the sake of the story. It's not a documentary. It's okay.
There you go.
Episode's pretty good.
Episode 1 is pretty good. Now, given how we have spoken about this, it sounds like something that we would wish to do more of. That will entirely depend on how this does numbers-wise, because it's very late, and there's a very good chance that this will go out, and some of our loyal viewers will watch it and listen to it, but it'll barely be a blip. So if it performs well enough, we will happily come back, but that is entirely dependent on that. So maybe we'll see you again, maybe we won't, but yes, that is episode 1 of The Queen's Gambit. So if you want to support everything we do, you can head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month to get some bonuses. As we mentioned at the start, there's a vote at the $10 tier every month for this one, that's why we're doing it. You can also like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Let us know what you thought of the show in the comments. And of course, get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. I'll also mention here at the end that we're doing a big vote to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers, where everyone can submit their own top list of TV shows of all time. You can submit a top 20 all the way up to a top 50, depending if you want, but it has to be at least a top 20. And movies will get points based on where you've placed them, and there'll be a results show revealing the top 50 TV shows of all time in February, voted for by you guys. So the deadline for that is the 1st of February to submit that. So there'll be a link. There's a community post on YouTube. It's been tweeted on the Twitter. It's on the Facebook page. And I will try and remember to put a link in this very description as well, and all the descriptions going forward for the TV reviews until it's done. So
get you.
Yes, check out that. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?